The battlefield was quiet now, too quiet. Hours ago, it had been filled with fire. Smoke and screams, the ground was torn apart by bombs. And the sky was still dark with ash. Bodies of both humans and aliens lay broken among the ruins of machines. It smelled of metal, blood, and burned earth. The war had passed through like a storm, and only silence remained. Among the broken weapons and shattered helmets, a young alien woman lay half-hidden under a collapsed wall. Her armor was cracked, her hands shaking, and her breathing weak. She pressed one hand against her wounded side, trying to stop the bleeding. Her own people had left her behind when they retreated. To them, she was just another fallen soldier, no different from the rest. She had always been taught that humans were cruel, merciless enemies, now lying alone. She thought maybe it was true. She closed her eyes, whispering to herself that this was the end. But then she heard it, footsteps slow, heavy steps crunching against broken stones. She froze, her heart beating faster. Was it one of her people returning? Or was it a human? Her eyes widened with fear, because if it was a human soldier, she had no strength to fight. She would die here, nameless, forgotten. The sound grew closer, steady and certain. Her breathing became sharp and uneven as she tried to hide. From behind the smoke, a figure appeared. It was tall, carrying a human rifle, with armor scorched but still strong. It was a human soldier, his helmet pushed back so his face could breathe the dirty air. His eyes scanned the wreckage like a hunter searching for prey. The alien woman's heart sank. This was the end. Her fingers curled weakly around a broken piece of metal, but she knew it was useless. The soldier stepped closer, and now his eyes locked on her for a long moment. They only stared at each other through the smoke. The alien woman expected death. She imagined the gun lifting, the shot fired, the pain ending. Her body tensed as she waited. But nothing happened. Instead, the human lowered his weapon slowly. He tilted his head, as if confused by what he saw. A wounded enemy, small and fragile under the broken wall. Not a threat, not a fighter anymore. Just a life about to fade away. The silence stretched between them, filled only by distant echoes of explosions. Finally, the human spoke, his voice rough but calm. "I won't hurt you," he said. The alien woman blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. Her language and his were not the same, but the tone was clear. There was no anger in it, no hatred, only something she had not expected on this battlefield. Mercy. Her breath shook as she tried to push herself back, but her body was weak and trembling. The human took one step closer, raising his hands to show he carried no threat. She could not believe it. An enemy soldier standing over her. And yet he was not striking. Her mind raced, filled with fear and confusion. Why was he not finishing her? Why would a human, the enemy, spare her life? The soldier looked around, checking the battlefield. He knew others could arrive at any time. He knew helping her was dangerous, maybe even treason. But when he looked back at her, he saw not an enemy. He saw someone broken, someone abandoned, someone left to die alone. Something inside him refused to walk away. He could not leave her. He had seen too much death already, and in this moment, saving one life felt heavier than killing many. The alien woman stared into his eyes. She saw no cruelty there, only tiredness. The kind of tiredness that comes from fighting too long. Her lips parted, but no words came. Only a faint sound. She wanted to ask why. She wanted to tell him to leave, but her voice was too weak. The soldier knelt beside her, pulling out a small medical pack from his belt. She flinched, expecting pain, but instead she felt cloth pressing against her wound. He was stopping the bleeding. The pain made her gasp, but it also kept her alive. Her eyes filled with tears, not from weakness but from shock. This was not what she had been told about humans. They were supposed to be monsters, killers without mercy. And yet here was one, saving her life when even her own people had abandoned her. Her heart pounded in her chest as she realized something had just changed. The war might still rage on, but for her, everything was different now. The battlefield was no longer silent. Her mind was alive with questions, and in the middle of smoke and ruins, Hope was born where she thought only death could live. The alien woman's chest rose and fell with sharp breaths. Her eyes followed every movement of the human soldier, afraid he would change his mind. But the man did not raise his gun. He did not turn away either. Instead, he pressed bandages against her wound, tying them firmly. Each touch was careful, not cruel. The battlefield around them was empty, yet in that moment, it felt like the world had shrunk to only two beings. The alien had been trained to believe humans were savage beasts. Her leaders told her that humans only knew how to destroy, how to burn, how to kill. She had seen human weapons rip through her people. She had seen cities turn to rubble. But this human before her was different. His eyes carried weight, but not hate. His movements were rough, but they carried purpose, not rage. When he finished tying the cloth, he leaned back. His face was covered in dirt and sweat. His lips dry, his hands shaking. He was tired like her. The alien wanted to ask why he was doing this, but the words stuck inside her throat. The human broke the silence first, his voice low. "You'll bleed out if I leave you here." She did not fully understand the words, but she understood the tone. It was a voice that chose to save, not to destroy. The alien shifted, pain flashing across her body. Her claws gripped the broken stone beneath her. Her eyes narrowed, suspicious. Her people had warned her that humans use tricks. Save you one moment, kill you the next. Was this his plan? But when she looked into his face again, she saw no trap, only a tired man who had already seen too much war. The human offered her water from his canteen. She hesitated, her pride telling her not to accept. But her body was weak, her throat dry like fire. Finally, she took a sip, the cool liquid sliding down like life itself. Tears formed in her eyes, not from pain, but from the strangeness of it all. How could an enemy's kindness taste sweeter than anything she had known? For the first time, she studied him closely. His armor was scratched, painted with dust and ash. His shoulders sagged like he carried the whole war on his back. His eyes, though human, reflected the same exhaustion she felt. Two soldiers from different worlds, yet bound by the same scars. She realized then, he was not much older than her. Not a monster, not a demon, just a man trying to survive. The silence between them was heavy, but not hostile. It was filled with questions neither could ask. The alien tried to rise, but her body betrayed her, collapsing into his arms. The human caught her quickly. Steadying her against the wall, she gasped, surprised by the warmth of his touch. He could have dropped her, let her fall, but he did not. Instead, he whispered something under his breath, words she could not understand. But the sound carried patience, maybe even comfort. Suddenly, a noise cracked across the distance. The alien froze, her body tensing. The human turned his head sharply. Gripping his rifle, voices faint but growing louder, echoed from beyond the smoke. Other soldiers were near, moving in their direction. The alien's heart raced. If they found her here, wounded beside a human, she would be finished. She looked at the man, panic in her eyes. Would he hand her over? Would he save himself? But the soldier acted fast. He pressed a finger to his lips, telling her to stay quiet. Then he dragged her deeper into the ruins, hiding her behind broken metal. Her wound burned as he pulled her, but she stayed silent. She could hear the boots of men walking close. Their voices carried laughter, curses, complaints about the battle. They were human soldiers, his people. If they saw her, they would kill her on the spot, and maybe punish him too. The alien trembled. But the human stayed calm, his rifle pointed toward the ground. His body shielding her. The footsteps came closer. Stones crunched under their weight. For a moment, she thought it was over. Her breath caught in her throat, her claws digging into the earth. But then, the soldiers turned away, their voices fading into the smoke. The danger passed like a shadow in the night. Only then did the human let out a long breath. The alien stared at him in disbelief. Why would he risk everything to hide her? Why would he protect someone his people called the enemy? Her chest tightened, not from pain but from confusion. She wanted to ask him again, why? But her lips could not form the word. Her heart whispered it anyway. And for the first time, A seed of trust was planted. The human soldier sat down beside her. He looked at her with tired eyes, but also with something else. Something she had never expected to see from a human. Compassion. He gave her food, only a small piece, but enough to keep her strength alive. And as they ate together in silence, the alien realized that the battlefield had changed. It was no longer a place of only death in the ruins of war. Something fragile had begun to grow, hope. The ruins creaked with the sound of shifting metal as the human soldier sat in silence. The alien woman leaned against the wall, her breathing shallow but steady now. She still could not understand why he was helping her. Her people would have left him to die without hesitation, and yet here he was, sharing food and water with someone who was supposed to be his enemy. The human's eyes moved constantly, scanning the horizon through cracks in the wreckage. He knew the patrols would return. He knew his own side would not forgive him if they discovered this secret. But still he stayed. Each choice he made was a risk, but one he was willing to take. Something in her broken state had stirred a part of him that war had almost destroyed. The part that still believed life was worth saving. The alien woman studied him carefully. She wanted to hate him, but her heart was conflicted. Every story her commanders told her about humans painted them as monsters. But this one treated her wound, shared his food, and even hid her from his own people. If this was a monster, then why did he seem more humane than anyone she had ever known? Night began to fall over the battlefield. The smoke turned into mist. Shadows stretched long across the broken land. The human stood and looked around. "We can't stay here," he muttered softly, though she barely understood his words, but his actions were clear. He wanted to move, to find a safer place. He offered her his hand, and after a long hesitation, she took it. Every step was agony for her. Her wound throbbed, and her body felt heavy like stone, yet the human supported her, holding her steady when she stumbled. They moved through the ruins like ghosts, careful, quiet, unseen. She wondered again why he was risking his life. If his people caught them, both would be executed without question. As they slipped into an old shelter, half buried in the earth, the alien woman finally spoke. Her voice was weak but sharp. "Why?" The human paused, looking at her with tired eyes. He did not answer right away. Instead, he pulled off his gloves, showing hands scarred and burned from battles long past. "I'm tired of watching everything die," he said softly, almost like a confession. She did not fully understand his words, but she understood his tone. It was the tone of someone who had seen too much destruction, someone who longed for something different. For a moment, silence filled the shelter. Only the sound of distant fires crackling in the night reached their ears. The alien woman leaned back, her claws digging into the dirt. Her people would call her weak for letting an enemy save her, but inside, she felt something she had not felt since before the war began. A fragile spark of trust. The human reached into his pack and pulled out another strip of bandage. He checked her wound again, tightening the cloth to stop more blood. His hands worked carefully, not as a soldier but as a healer. She flinched at the touch, but not out of fear. This time, it was because she felt the strange warmth of his kindness. It was dangerous, more dangerous than any weapon, because kindness could break walls that even war could not. As the night deepened, the sound of voices echoed again outside. This time it was louder, closer. A full squad of human soldiers searching the ruins. The alien's heart pounded as she looked at the man beside her. Would he choose her or his people? Would he hand her over to save himself? The human's jaw tightened as he listened to the patrol pass. Every instinct as a soldier told him to step out, to salute, to follow orders. But something stronger held him back. He turned to her, whispering, "Stay quiet. Trust me." She did not know why, but she obeyed. Together, they pressed against the wall, waiting as heavy boots stamped above their shelter. One wrong sound, one wrong breath, and it would all be over. The soldiers above cursed and laughed, tossing scraps of metal aside. Then, slowly, their voices faded into the distance. The danger passed again. But the human and the alien both knew it was only temporary. The battlefield was no longer safe. Every second they stayed was another chance to be caught. The alien woman stared at the human with wide eyes. She whispered something in her own language, words filled with confusion and disbelief. Though he did not understand the words, he understood the feeling. Her eyes asked the same question her voice had: why risk everything? And once more, he answered with silence, because sometimes silence spoke louder than words. That night, as the two sat in the cold shelter, the alien realized something she never thought possible. Her survival was now tied to a human, an enemy soldier who had chosen compassion over obedience. And the human realized something as well. He had crossed a line he could never return from. By saving her, he had betrayed his own war. But in that betrayal, he felt more human than he had in years. And so, in the middle of a dead battlefield, one risky choice bound them together, not as enemies, but as two lives struggling to find meaning in the ashes of war. The night dragged on with a heavy silence, broken only by distant thunder of artillery far beyond the hills. The alien woman lay curled against the cold wall, her wound aching, her eyes heavy. But she could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she remembered her people's voices, calling humans monsters, demons, destroyers of worlds. And yet the man sitting near her had done nothing monstrous. He had not harmed her. He had not mocked her. He had only helped. She opened her eyes again and saw him still awake, his rifle across his lap, his back resting against the wall. The firelight from burning wreckage outside flickered across his face, showing scars old and new. He looked tired, more tired than any enemy she had ever seen. It struck her that perhaps he was no different from her, just another soldier trapped in a war neither of them asked for. The human glanced toward her, and for a moment their eyes met. The alien quickly looked away, her heart racing. She did not want him to see her fear, but she knew it was still written across her face. He sighed softly, lowering his head, as if saying without words that he understood, that he did not expect her to trust him yet. Time passed slowly, the cold biting deeper into their bones. The human removed part of his cloak and placed it over her. She froze at the touch, unsure if it was a trick, but the warmth was real. The gesture genuine. No soldier would give away his own warmth in this bitter night unless he truly meant it. Her claws clutched the edge of the cloak, holding it close to her chest. She whispered a quiet word in her language, one that meant thanks, though she doubted he understood. The human tilted his head as if curious, but he did not ask. Instead, he leaned back, his eyes scanning the broken ceiling above them. For the first time, the alien wondered what his world was like. Was it as broken as hers? Was it filled with the same endless fire and grief? Or did he have memories of green fields, blue skies, and laughter that no war could erase? When dawn began to creep through the smoke, the alien tried to move. Her body trembled, but she forced herself to sit up. The human noticed, rising to steady her. She pushed his hand away at first, pride burning inside her, but her legs betrayed her, collapsing under her weight. And once more, his arms caught her, strong yet careful. Her claws rested against his chest, her eyes looking up into his. There was no malice there, only patience. That moment frightened her more than death, because trust was more dangerous than any wound. If she let herself believe in him and he betrayed her later, the pain would be worse than dying. And yet, as he helped her back to the ground, she felt the first small crack in the wall she had built inside herself. The human gave her food again, this time a little more. She hesitated, then accepted, chewing slowly. Their silence was different now, not sharp with fear, but softer, almost like a fragile thread connecting them. He even tried to speak a few words, simple, slow, pointing to things as if teaching a child. She tilted her head, confused, then surprised herself by repeating the sounds back. Her people's tongue was harsh, his was softer, but somehow, she managed to copy one word. He smiled faintly, and that startled her more than anything else. Why would an enemy smile at her? The day grew dangerous. Human scouts passed through the ruins again, and once more he shielded her from their eyes. This time, He pressed her hand tightly against his arm, keeping her still as soldiers walked only steps away. She could feel his heartbeat through his armor. Steady and strong, her own heart pounded wildly, but she forced herself to trust his silence. When the danger passed, she did not pull away as quickly as before. Something unspoken lingered between them. Later, as the sun dipped low and shadows returned, she gathered her courage and asked again, "Why?" Her voice weak, halting, but stronger than before. The human stared at her for a long moment, then looked away. He did not answer with words this time. Instead, he held out his canteen, waiting until she drank. Then he simply said, "Because someone has to." The words were simple, but their weight struck deep inside her heart. Because someone has to. She lay back, staring at the broken roof. For the first time since the war began, she did not feel alone. She did not feel abandoned. The fear inside her was still there, but it was not as strong as it had been. And in its place, something else was growing. Something fragile, dangerous, and impossible. Trust. The ruins were never still for long. The alien woman had begun to feel a fragile thread of safety with the human soldier. But that thread was thin. The war did not sleep. And soon the sound of boots and engines echoed once more across the broken battlefield. This time, it was not a wandering patrol. It was a full search party. Voices barked orders, rifles clicked, and shadows moved with purpose. The human soldier's face grew hard, his eyes sharp as he listened. He knew these were not simple scouts. These were hunters. Men trained to sweep the ruins, to find survivors, to kill or capture without mercy. If they found her, the alien woman would not live another second. And if they found him hiding her, he would be marked as a traitor to his own kind. The alien trembled as the noise grew closer. Her claws dug into the dirt, her breath ragged. She turned to him with desperate eyes, silently asking if he would leave her, for if he chose to step away now, she could not stop him. But he did not move away. He crouched low beside her, whispering in a steady voice she could barely understand. "Quiet, trust me." The hunters spread across the ruins, their flashlights sweeping like cold white eyes. Shouts rose in the distance, orders to check every corner, every shadow. The human soldier guided her deeper into the rubble. Each step was agony for her wound, but she forced herself forward. He pressed her against the wall and covered her with his own body, his arm around her shoulder, his hand against her back. He became her shield. The boots of the hunters stomped above. One soldier jumped down into the trench. Scanning with his light, the alien's heart almost stopped. The beam swept so close she could see dust glowing in its path. Her breath caught in her throat, but the human tightened his hand against her back. A silent command: "Do not move. Do not breathe." The soldier above muttered, cursed, then climbed back up. The danger passed, but only by inches. The alien could not believe it. She had trusted him for one moment, and that moment had saved her life. Her chest tightened with something strange, something she did not want to name, but it burned inside her, powerful and undeniable. Not only fear, not only survival, but trust growing deeper. As the hunters moved on, the human knew their time was almost gone. He turned to her quickly, his face close, his voice urgent. "We can't stay," he said. Even if she did not understand every word, she understood his tone. They had to move before the hunters circled back. They slipped through the ruins like shadows. The alien leaned heavily on him, her body weak but her spirit forcing her forward. Every step left her breathless, but every time she faltered, his hand was there to hold her. The hunters' voices echoed behind them, closer now. "Check the east trench," one barked. "Don't let anyone escape," another shouted. The alien's legs gave out, and she fell hard against the rubble. The sound was too loud, stones clattering down. Her eyes widened in terror. The hunters would hear. The human dropped beside her, pulling her into cover. He pressed his hand over her mouth gently, not to hurt, but to silence. Above them, voices shouted, flashlights swept. The hunters had heard the noise. The human's heart pounded. He could feel her trembling against him, her breath hot against his hand. For a moment, Time froze. Then the hunters passed by again, arguing among themselves, deciding the noise was just falling debris. Their steps grew distant, their lights fading. Only when the silence returned did he release her. She gasped softly, her chest heaving. Her eyes wide with shock, she looked at him, her lips parting as if to speak. But no words came. Instead, she simply stared. In that stare was more than fear. There was recognition that this man had risked death again, not once, not twice, but every moment since he had found her. He was no longer just an enemy soldier. He was her protector. As night fell once more, the human led her into a collapsed bunker. Safer than the open ruins, he helped her sit, then collapsed beside her, exhausted. The weight of his choice pressed on him like a mountain. He had crossed the line so many times there was no going back. If his people found out, he would be hunted as well. But as he looked at her, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark, he knew he could not regret it. The alien clutched the cloak he had given her tighter around herself. Her body ached, but inside her, something else grew stronger. She had been left behind by her people, abandoned like broken armor, yet here, in the hands of an enemy, she had found protection she never expected. For the first time since the war began, she whispered softly, in her language, "I trust you." The human did not understand the words, but he understood the look in her eyes. And that was enough. The night air was cold and sharp, filled with the echo of distant battles still raging far away. The human soldier knew they could not hide forever. Every hour the hunters drew closer, and every hour her strength faded. If they stayed in the ruins much longer, they would both die. The only chance was to move, to escape the battlefield before it swallowed them whole. He crouched beside her, his face set with determination. "Move," he whispered, his hand motioning toward the broken horizon. She did not understand the words, but she understood the meaning. Her body was weak, but her spirit forced her to nod, with his arm around her. They stepped into the night. Each step was heavy, but each step carried the promise of survival. The ruins stretched like a maze of bones. Metal twisted into strange shapes, walls collapsed into jagged mountains. The alien woman leaned against him, her claws gripping his armor as they climbed. He carried most of her weight, his breath ragged, but he never slowed. Behind them, the voices of hunters echoed again. Searching, relentless, flashlights swept the shadows, forcing them to crouch low, to crawl through cracks in the earth. Her wound burned like fire when she stumbled and fell, gasping as blood stained the bandages again. The human dropped beside her, pulling her close. He tore another strip of cloth from his own uniform, pressing it against the wound. His hands worked fast, desperate. Her eyes filled with tears, not from the pain, but from the strange truth that he cared more for her life than her own people had. They pressed on, crawling through narrow passages. At one point they reached a collapsed tunnel where machines had buried the ground in steel and stone. The human pushed rocks aside, cutting his hands. The alien tried to help, her claws scratching against the rubble. Together they cleared just enough space to squeeze through. Their bodies scraped against metal, their breaths shallow in the tight dark. When they emerged on the other side, the air felt fresher. The stars shone faintly through the smoke, like silent witnesses above. The hunters were closer now, their voices sharper. The human soldier pulled her into a ditch, pressing her down as a squad passed. The enemy lights swept across the ruins only a few steps away. The alien held her breath, her body trembling against his. His arm wrapped around her, holding her steady. They waited until the voices drifted into the distance before rising again. The ground sloped upward, leading toward the old evacuation zone. If they could reach the ridge beyond, there might be a chance to signal rescue, but the path was long and guarded. The human paused, studying the route. Every instinct told him it was almost impossible. Yet when he looked at her, pale but determined, he knew they had to try. As they climbed, drones hummed in the sky above. The machines swept the battlefield with beams of light. Searching for survivors, one beam passed so close the heat brushed their skin. The human pulled her under a broken vehicle. Covering her with his own body, the drone lingered, scanning. Her heart thundered, certain it would find them. But at the last moment, it flew away. The silence after its departure felt like a gift from fate. The alien's strength began to fail, her steps faltering more often. At one point she collapsed completely, unable to rise. The human knelt, lifting her into his arms without hesitation. She gasped, her pride wounded. But she did not fight him. Her head rested against his chest, hearing the rhythm of his heartbeat. Steady, strong, carrying her forward. Her eyes closed, but not in fear this time, for the first time. She felt safe in the arms of someone she had been taught to hate. The ridge came into view at last, the sky opening above them. Faint lights blinked in the distance, rescue ships or maybe scouts. Hope flickered inside her chest, weak but real. But the hunters were not far behind. Their shouts rose, weapons firing into the air. The human broke into a run, carrying her as bullets struck the ground around them. Each step was fire in his lungs. But he did not stop. Her claws clung to him, her voice whispering weakly in her language. Words of trust, words he could not understand. At the edge of the ridge, explosions lit the ground behind them. The hunters were closing in. The human placed her down gently, raising his rifle. He stood between her and the enemy, ready to fight. She reached out, gripping his arm, her eyes wide with fear. He looked back at her, his expression calm but fierce. No more running, his eyes seemed to say, and for the first time, she believed him. Together, they faced the storm. Two enemies bound not by war, but by survival. And as the night roared with fire and thunder, they stepped forward into the unknown. The ridge shook with the force of weapons, light flashing across the ruins like storms tearing the sky. The human soldier fired his rifle with calm precision, covering the alien woman as the hunters advanced. His body was tired, his lungs burned, but his stance never broke. Each shot was not just survival. It was defiance. Defiance against his orders. Defiance against a war that demanded nothing but hate. The alien woman clutched the ground, her claws digging into the earth. Her heart pounded as she watched him fight not for himself, but for her. She had never seen such madness, such courage. An enemy soldier risking everything. Standing between her and death, her people had abandoned her, left her bleeding in the dirt. But this man, this human, refused to leave her. Bullets screamed past. Drones whirred overhead, the hunters shouting to corner them. The human pressed close, dragging her further up the ridge. The world narrowed into fire, smoke and breathless fear. Then in the distance, a beam of light split the clouds, rescue ships sweeping the battlefield. Searching for survivors, hope flared inside her chest. Fragile but alive, the human looked at her, his face streaked with blood and dirt. He pointed to the light, urging her forward. She understood this was their chance, their only chance. Together they stumbled through the last stretch, each step a war against exhaustion. Her legs buckled, but he lifted her once more, carrying her toward salvation. Behind them, the hunters roared with fury. Firing wildly, one shot tore past, grazing the human's arm. Blood spilling down his sleeve, he gritted his teeth. But he did not falter. He kept moving. Every step heavier than the last, the alien reached for him, her claws pressing against his chest. Her voice cracked as she whispered in her tongue, words filled with desperation. "Don't fall, not now." At last, they reached the clearing, the rescue ships hovering above. Spotlights swept over them, locking onto the strange sight. A human soldier carrying an alien woman. The battlefield seemed to freeze at that moment. The hunters slowed, stunned by what they saw. Even the drones hung in silence, recording the impossible. The aliens' people were there too, their own rescue craft lowering from the sky. Their soldiers stared, weapons raised but uncertain. How could an enemy be carrying one of their own? The human placed her gently on the ground, then raised his hands, not in surrender, but in peace. The alien woman looked up at him, her eyes wide. She understood what this meant. He was giving himself up to save her. Her heart tore with the weight of the moment. She crawled forward despite the pain. Pulling herself beside him, her voice rose. weak but strong enough to echo across the silence. "He saved me," she cried in her own language. Her people's soldiers froze, shocked at her words. She repeated it again, louder, her eyes blazing with truth. "He saved me." The humans above hesitated, their rifles aimed but shaking. The alien soldiers lowered their weapons slowly, and for the first time on this battlefield, no one fired, no one shouted, no one moved. The silence was louder than war. The alien woman reached for the human's hand. Gripping it tightly, her claws scratched against his skin. But her touch was gentle. Tears slipped down her face. Hot against the cold night. "You gave me hope," she whispered in broken human words. Her voice cracked, but the meaning was clear. The human's eyes softened, and he answered quietly, "Maybe that's what makes us human." Rescue soldiers from both sides stepped forward, uncertain, but no one dared break the fragile moment. They saw something no war could explain, an alien and a human, enemies by blood, holding hands like allies. In the ruins of death, they had found life. In the ashes of hate, they had found kindness. The battlefield was not silent anymore. It was filled with something greater than victory or defeat. It was filled with a truth that echoed stronger than gunfire. That kindness could survive even in war. That hope could be born even in the darkest night. As the rescue ships lifted them into the light, the alien woman looked back one last time at the ruins where everything had changed. She had been abandoned on the battlefield, but in the arms of an enemy, she had found what she thought was lost forever. Not just survival, not just mercy, she had found hope.